Thanks for being on the show today, and many thanks for staying tuned to ADBN Television, watching live from Abuja studio, the Market Report. Yeah, Barrister, are you there? Very good day to you.
Good afternoon, sir. Can you hear me now?
All right, good. I can hear you now. I believe we will get better as we continue our discussion. Now, Barrister, what is your reaction to the tax bill? Let me ask that first. What is your reaction to the tax bill law in Nigeria?
My first reaction to the tax bill law in Nigeria is that it's an audacious innovation into our laws.
Hmm.
Our tax laws are moribund and then they are old, archaic, and no longer fit for the purpose that they are meant for. So
Hmm.
I, as a person, I think I support the tax reform bills, the laws in the whole. I like the idea, and it is actually a good innovation for our client.
Hmm. Very interesting. Now, one of the issues why I quickly say we should engage you on this particular topic was the stakeholders level. It has been recorded that
Yeah.
many Nigerians are not taking along at the beginning of this tax reform issue that President Tinubu brought up. But in your own assessment, how will you rate the stakeholders' engagement at this point in time going forward into the tax bill in Nigeria?
You see, the issue of stakeholder engagement has been at its lowest, in my opinion. The government did not do enough in stakeholders engagement. The fact is, stakeholders, ranging from not just the government forum, the Nigerian Governors Forum, the everyday person on the street, and all societies, must be carried along.
Hmm. All right.
Not just for anything. There is a complete breakdown of trust between the people and the government.
Hmm.
The Nigerian people do not trust the Nigerian government in as regards any kind of policy
Hmm.
because they believe they will be short charged, and the government has never been for them. They are there for their selfish interest.
Hmm. Hmm. Very
So
interesting. Go ahead,
stakeholder
sir.
engagement
Hmm.
stakeholders engagement, in my opinion, has not been at its best.
Hmm. Hmm.
The tax reform bills needed to get to the lowest of the low in the society in the language that they understand. The way the government campaigned to get into power is the way they ought to explain the tax reform bills in the local language of each community for them to understand the essence of this.
Very
That's my
interesting.
opinion.
All right. Now, many people have argued that our tax law are archaic. They are old, they are colonial in nature, and they are not giving us the progress that we require. Do you also in that school of thought that our tax laws are too
Yes, I am
old?
in the school of thought.
That's
I
very
am in the
interesting.
school of thought.
Hmm. Hmm.
I am in the school of thought that our tax laws are old and they need to be updated.
Hmm.
However, I will give an example with the UK.
Hmm.
VAT in the UK is 20%.
Hmm.
But the people here are willing to pay that VAT. Why? Because they know the money will be used for something for them. It is for their benefit. The government takes this VAT from them, but the money will be used for things that will better the lives of the citizenry. Is that the position in Nigeria? Is that
Hmm.
what we have? I leave the answer to the audience to answer.
All right. In that regard, one of the key things that we need to appreciate the government of the day for is that having identified that our tax laws are old, and having also understand that we need to progressively improve on our tax law. But there are these questions that stakeholders are yet to comprehend. That this particular tax law, when it comes into place, will bring about stability and alignment with the global best practice. You made mention of the UK scenario, that 20% VAT, but people are willing to pay. In Nigerian's case, this physical stability that we are talking about talks about how government raise money and spend money. Do you think that the road that we are following now will bring accountability to how government is spending the money that is going to be making from Nigerians?
You see, sir, with everything that has to do with our nation, the
Hmm.
laws are there, but have they ever been followed?
Hmm.
Have they ever been followed? is the basic question we need to ask ourselves. And then if we answer that question, then we can set an agenda for how we feel the government of the day will go. I personally have little trust in the government of the day to follow upon whatever they say as regards how the monies will be spent. I'll give you an example with what happened during the Jonathan's era. When we had the excess money and all, and they were told they were keeping this money for us, what happened? The excess crude account and all the monies we had, what happened to those monies? Were they used for the benefit of the nation? So, in this instance, the monies that will be made from the tax reform bills, will they be used for the benefits of Nigerians? That's the question. But I personally do not think the government is going to do that.
Now, let's now go into the issue of the tax reform itself, talking about what opposition were brought in terms of stakeholders and argument against some of the, clauses in that tax reform. There was this issue about 50% based on equality, 30% based on derivation, and 20% based on population. These are the suggestions from the Northern Governors Forum. Do you agree with them that this is better than the initial, 50% based on derivation and 30% on population and 20% on equality that was initially initiated by the tax committee? So which one do you think is more better? Is it the one that the governors have now put in place, which is 50% equality, 30% population and 20% derivation? Which one do you think is more better in your own view?
You see, the governors had, and as it is their right to oppose it, that look, they were scared of losing financial autonomy. And then in the fear of losing financial autonomy, they made a whole lot of noise about it. And they've gotten what they want in this instance. So I will believe personally, I prefer the first example and the first suggestion. But again, the governors are closer to their people. They hear, in whatever way we say it, whether there's a breakdown of the social contract between the people and the government, which I think is the case most times in Nigeria. People do not believe, or the government do not actually feel what the people feel. Now, but they are the representative of the people to the presidency. So from what they feel the second one is better. And because they feel the second one is better, I will say they are doing so because of the people.
Very interesting. Now let's take another very dissect issue from that tax public hearing in National Assembly. For National Assembly members, both from the Senate and the House, they were like, for them, they are out to ensure that there is no burden on citizens. What do you make of that statement? There is no burden on the citizen. But we all know that there is no way tax will not bring burden on the citizen. So what's your take on that?
If the VAT is increased, there's definitely burden on the citizens. And we all know how our nation works. Even if the VAT is not significant, but the way we behave and the way we walk back in Nigeria is we tend to just push things and just look for an opportunity to either hike prices or just make the commodities not easily accessible to people. And even if we make it accessible to people, we make sure the price is exorbitant. So in all of this, what I would say is the government must put in a mechanism to ensure that even if the VAT is increased, and this is happening, there must be a mechanism in place to checkmate how the effect is felt on the citizens.
I loved your end point. The effect on the citizen in this regard must be positive, because all Nigerians are not looking for a burden tax, because a burden tax means that they may also need to lose so much of their value when it comes to purchasing power, because that's one of the key aspects of a very negative tax. Now let's take a look at what the chairman of the Presidential Committee on Fiscal Policy and Tax Reform said. That's Mr. Taiwo Oyedele. For him, his interest is to serve in the interest of the bill is to serve the interest of all Nigerians, ensuring fair and efficient tax regime. But we have checked all around the world. We can't actually have a 100% tax that is so efficient and so fair. Do you share in that light?
Yeah, I mean, there's nowhere that any man-made law is 100%. Nothing is. There's no society that has it 100%. Until you live there or you be there, you know that there are flaws with the tax laws or whatever kind of law. Mr. Taiwo might have the intentions, and he seems like a very honest gentleman with the best of intentions for his nation. However, will Mr. Taiwo single-handedly oversee the implementation of the tax? If he's not going to single-handedly oversee this implementation of the tax, or can he be in the 36 states at the same time?
You are very
He
correct
can
on
be
that.
in the 36 states at the same time. Can he be in 774 local governments at the same time? So, will the implementation, you see, as I have said earlier, the breakdown of the social contract between the people and the government, there's this public distrust. And the people, most times, that are heading the affairs of these things do not have the best interest of the nation at heart. They do not give the best. They do not even, as I have said earlier, we have 1,001 laws, but those laws continue to be in the books. The tax reform bills, when it becomes law, is just going to be another law in the books. How will the implementation go? That's the important part of all this discussion.
Very interesting.
And
Now, let me now take you on the philosophy of tax. Across the world, tax is known for three major philosophy background. One, it has to be fair, it has to be transparent,
yeah,
and it has to be justifiable, through balancing the need for public revenue. Because you can't be collecting tax from people without justifying the balancing with the need of the people. I want to talk about need of people, talking about infrastructure, we're talking about social need of Nigerians and the rest of them. In this regard now, because the fear of ordinary Nigerians is that by the time this tax bill is passed into law, what will happen to businesses? What will happen to individuals that these taxes will be collecting from? From your own angle as a lawyer, as a legal practitioner, how do you think Nigerians will feel when all these are not followed to the letter according to the philosophy of tax law?
you see, sir, I think while you were even asking the question, there was a smirk on your face, which shows you know that issue of fairness. You said fairness. It has to be
Justifiable
for the people, justifiable,
and
and what
balancing.
again? And
Balancing.
balancing. The whole of these things you mentioned, there is no part of the tax that we pay in Nigeria at the moment that can fit into any of those three. You would agree with me? So, on the issue of whether or not the tax reform bills will cure that, I don't know what to say to that.
Very
Because
interesting.
basically, there's fairness. The tax laws has never been fair. Ones will be fair in the books, but how will the implementation be? Is it justiciable or justifiable? What infrastructures do we have for the tax that we have been paying formally? Is it balanced? Who are the people who pay the most tax? Is it the rich who have the capacity to pay the best accountants in the world to ensure they don't pay so much tax? Or the poor people who are just looking for their daily bread? Who are the people who pay the most tax? I leave the audience to answer that question.
All right. Now, talking about the audience and talking about Nigerians who have reacted to the tax bill, one of the area they are reacted to was the VAT increase. For instance, we are currently having the 7.5% VAT, which is proposed to move to 10% in 2025. Then we also have what we call the gradual increment to 12.5%. Then by 2029, it is expected to move between 15% by 2030. What's your reaction to this gradual increase in VAT as it's being called?
I mean, what I would say is that the gradual increase will lessen immediate impact. But there are actually concerns about the cumulative effect and potential inflationary pressures that it is going to put on all the facilities, I mean, on all the goods and services and whatever we are doing as a nation. There is that concern that there will be pressure on it, and then unless the government has a workable mechanism, it's not just providing a mechanism by words. Is it workable? Is it fit for the purpose? Can it do what it wants? It is there to do. Then there will be inflation additional to what we already have on ground.
Although in the tax bill, there's one particular clause that is being celebrated by everyone, particularly the business community. Company income tax has been reduced from 30% to 25%. Do you share in that light that we should have company income tax reduced to that level?
Yeah, I share in the light. You see, the company income tax that is reduced would help the companies. It will actually help the companies to develop and then give them more opportunities to do more. In my opinion, like instead of paying that in tax, they could use that to expand their business, and then that means more people getting employed, depending on what kind of service that they provide. But expansion in the company means there will be need for more manpower. It's just normal calculations of and then so I share in the light that the company income tax, the incentive on those companies is a very good initiative, but it has a potential of being abused. It has a potential of being abused. And then, as you know, some companies, the way we do things back home, there's no system that is 100% clean. However, there should be there should be a possibility of you saying this thing is going to work. I'm trying not to use very strong words,
Exactly.
and that's why I'm trying to. I think I stammer a bit. In all, there's a potential of it being abused, and unless there's a way that will be checkmated, I think we would have something that in the future we would say that this was left as a leeway. The multinationals have a lot of friends in government who will just continue to give these taxes. And then at the end of the day, the companies make a lot of money. While the populace pay more taxes, while they make more profits for themselves.
Now, let's now take one of the opposition to the bill. Nigerian Customs Service said some of the clauses in the new tax bill will take them out of circulation. Meaning that if that law is passed into place now, Nigerian Customs will be docile, may not be having much work to do again. Do you share in that light also, or do you agree that the bill will take out custom from its duty?
First of all, sir, customs anywhere in the world is not a revenue generating agency. The duty of the customs is to protect our borders. Yeah. Are they a revenue generating agency? I doubt that's not their core function. But we are where we are at the moment. And in my opinion, the bill will not make custom redundant. However, there's a need for more discussions with the both agencies for them to come to a logical conclusion on how the tax reform bills and the custom will work together. I mean, when the bill becomes law, how it is going to help the custom to continue doing what they are doing at the moment, even though, in my opinion, it is not their duty to get revenue for the government.
Very interesting. Now, another very thick opposition was from Petroleum and Gas Senior Staff Association of Nigeria, Pengason. I know you are very familiar with Pengason. They also came up and said, If this bill is passed, it will jeopardize job security and discourage investment in the oil and gas sector. And many of us are like, what is really happening? Does this particular bill is coming to drive investors from the oil and gas sector in Nigeria, or what? In your own opinion, I know you must have gone through some of the clauses of the law. Do you see that happening in Nigeria?
Yeah, the fact is, the tax reform bills could impact the oil and gas sector if not carefully designed. That's the position. I mean, it has that potential, and I think the government needs to put in mitigating measures to protect job security and encourage investment in the sector. And at this stage, we should be looking how to diversify the economy away from over reliance on oil and gas at this juncture in our life. We have 1,001 things where we could make money from. Why the over reliance on oil? And that's why it will affect the oil and gas sector because of the over reliance at the moment.
Very interesting. On the other hand, there is this also argument from Academic Staff Union or University ASU, who warn that tax that is educational tax funding from TED fund, that the
Yeah.
particular bill also wants to reduce the power, reduce the amount, and by 2030 take out TED fund. They are now shouting that this must not come into place. In your own observation, do you think that TED fund should go by 2030, or government should find a way around to ensure that TED fund remain? But the question is that where will be the money to fund TED fund come from?
You see, fact is, TED Fund is a very crucial agency in the development of our universities overall. The fact is, most of the capital projects you see in the universities are funded by TED Fund. This is common knowledge. If you go to the universities, if you see the big projects there, you would see funded by TED Fund, funded by TED Fund, all written on it. So, TED Fund, our universities as they are at the moment, they do not have the capacity to generate enough income for themselves. So, there's no self reliance. They are not self reliant at the moment. So, what we need is for the government to provide alternative sourcing for alternative sourcing, alternative fund sourcing. That's how I'll put it. The government needs to provide that there's actually an alternative to the TED fund. But it's not just the alternative by word or by mouth, but it should be something that would help our universities. Without TED fund, most of our universities will not have the facilities they have at the moment. Meaning the education which we are saying is the bedrock of the society will be affected because most of the facilities in the universities are already overstretched. We are facility wise, our universities are not doing as well as they should. A lot has been done by TED fund, but more needs to be done. They're moving faster than we think with I mean, a lot of things, the AI and all. And our facilities are still left in the 20th century facilities. You see, we need we need the alternative source for those funds to cure what TED Fund is doing at that point.
I agree with you on that because we need alternative funding. But the question still boils down to National Assembly. Starting from this week, the Harmonization Committee of National Assembly, both the House and the Senate, will be meeting to harmonize these laws, harmonize some of the stakeholders, thoughts, ideas, suggestions, as I raise in the question that we have just helped us to answer. But let's start first, as way of recommendation. What is your advice to the Harmonization Committee of National Assembly as they begin to take one after the other the suggestion from critical stakeholders which they engage, which they also hear from them into these tax laws that we are talking about? So what's your advice to the National Assembly Harmonization Committee that will be looking into
I
some
would
of the
say the
crucial
first
issues?
thing, the first thing is going to be that they should engage stakeholders early. Engage all stakeholders because the tax reform bills is to be passed for the purpose of Nigerians. It should be for us. It should not be us. So, and that means our input must be hard. Our input as much as possible. And then there must be transparency and openness in the reforms, that the rationale behind the tax, the policies, and there should be an open door policy for feedbacks and suggestions. I would say again, there should be ensure that like there should be enough consultation, and everybody should be included in the consultation. It should not be a selective consultation. It must be an all-inclusive consultation. The government, the National Assembly, must leave a way of feedback for stakeholders to give feedbacks in whatever capacity they can to ensure that the tax laws meet the required threshold of what it needs to be. And then again, finally, the point I made earlier, public awareness. Public awareness is not so much. I don't have, I'm doing an armchair analysis at the moment, but I believe if you meet most of the populace in Nigeria now, they don't even understand what the tax reform bills is all about. So, back to the topic of how the government got to power, how the National Assembly got elected in all their constituencies is because they spoke to their people in the language they understood. The tax bills must be passed down to the people the way they campaigned to get into office.
Right.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much, Barrister Musa Abdullahi. Musa Abdullahi, thank you for your time. Thank you for your input. And I can assure you that this is quite very simplified for many Nigerians, many of our viewers to understand the input of stakeholders in this particular tax reform bill. I appreciate your coming on the show. And I also want to thank you once again for being on the show. Thank you so much, Barrister Abdullahi.
Thank you very much. Thank you
And I
for
hope that
having
when
me.
I call you next, you make yourself available for us, sir.
I am available for you. I mean, we had our that we will discuss outside the
All right, sir.
programs,
All
but
right.
I
Thanks.
hope to be
All right.